Number 1. A few years ago, my friend Alison and I decided to head to a local beach on a hot summer day. We were in our pre-teens, so I had my mum drive us there. When we get there, it was incredibly crowded with little kids playing in the sand and on the nearby jungle gym. Alison and I decided to sit ourselves down in the sand and enjoy the heat, while my mum and one of her friends that she invited to come along kept an eye on us. We had probably been there a few hours, and at this point, the beach started to clear out as it got colder. Alison and I took a break from taking photos of each other planking and sat across from each other chatting about the new Iron Man. I sensed something approaching us and looked over to see this 20-year-old Hispanic man coming up to us and start chatting with us. At first, everything was fine, but then I noticed he kept nudging closer to us and looking around and behind him. It totally freaked me out. He then asked if we had boyfriends or if we liked older men, to which we both replied no. He scoffed and tried to convince us that we were basically the same age, which we didn't buy at all. While this was happening, Alison and I were texting each other back and forth frantically, trying to figure out how to get this guy to leave. She then told me that I should say that I have to go to the bathroom, and after a quick glare in her direction for making me have to do it, I did exactly that, and she quickly said, "Me too." We both stood up and walked to the brick bathroom house while he of course followed us, pausing and waiting just outside the bathroom. When we got inside, we started freaking out to each other about what to do, but when I poked my head out a few minutes later, he was gone. My mum was standing in front of the bathroom with her friend and told us that they noticed the guy acting weird and panicked when he followed us. She then said that her friend asked the guy what he was doing there, and when he tried to tell her that he was our friend from school, she made a scene. She was a small young woman, but still totally intimidating. The guy then looked flustered and walked away. Alison and I were relieved after that and decided to go hang out on the jungle gym next to the bathroom house. When I looked to my right, before we reached the jungle gym, I felt my stomach drop when I saw the man, along with 7 other sketchy guys, quickly leaving the area into the woods. I don't know what would have happened if the guy convinced us to somehow go somewhere with him, but I'm just thankful my mum's friend stepped in and told him to leave. Number 2. My best friend Diamond and I took a trip down to a little town called Oxnard on the California coast to visit my aunt. Since we left in the afternoon, we didn't arrive until sunset. My aunt still wasn't home, so we decided to head to the beach. When we arrived, it was already dark, but since I hadn't seen the ocean in years, I didn't care. We grabbed our blankets and started for the sand. That's when we heard him. About 200 feet away was a man. He had his back turned to us and was screaming and flailing around his arms wildly. We tried looking around, but even in the dark we could tell there was no one around for him to be screaming at. A little wary, we continued walking towards the shore. Excited, I put my blanket down and looked up. The man had turned around and was now facing us, still screaming and waving his arms around. I looked up at Diamond and told her we could come back tomorrow in the day. We started walking towards the car and I glanced over. I don't know if it was the dark, but it looked like he was closer, still screaming. I looked down and asked Diamond if he was looking over. She looked up and started walking faster. He's coming towards us. I picked up my pace as I saw my car in the distance. I pulled out my keys from my pocket. Almost there. Run! I turned to see Diamond running through the sand as fast as she could. Terrified at this point, I turned back to see this man sprinting full force in my direction. I let out a scream as I bolted towards my car. Diamond was already there, screaming at me to open the door. I climbed in, locked the doors and floored the gas. I looked in the rearview mirror and see the man still sprinting towards my car now yelling obscenities at the top of his lungs. I sped down the street, out of view of this man, out of the neighborhood we parked in, and to my aunt's house. She was pulling up just as we were, and I broke down and told her everything. They said they'd go and check, but without a description, there was nothing they could do. Diamond and I stayed up all night, too terrified to sleep. The next morning, the police called my aunt. They had checked the area we were at the night before, and they found multiple knives scattered through the sand. The last one they found was on the sidewalk next to where my car was, hidden in some bushes.
Number 3.
When I was about 6 years old, my family went on vacation to the beach in Florida. I'm a little younger than my siblings, so while they were doing their own thing with their friends, I was stuck wherever my mum would take me. For the most part, we stayed in the extremely crowded pool area by our hotel, which had direct access to the beach. It's all a bit hazy, but at some point, when I was swimming, I looked up where my mum was supposed to be sitting, and she wasn't there. I was really attached to her, so I got out and started looking for her. I scanned all the chairs, took a trip around the bar next to the pool, but I couldn't find her. For some reason, 6-year-old me decided she'd gone for a walk on the beach without me, so I made my way out there looking for her. I walked about a half a mile down the beach out of the crowds to a more vacant area, and just remember starting to cry because I thought I'd never see my mum again. Just as I basically had given up, a woman and a man came up to me. They asked me who I was, if I had any family nearby, and I told them I was alone and was looking for my mother. They said to me that they'd seen my mother and told me that they would hang out with me until she comes back. Well, these people took me about 2 miles away from my hotel. We walked down the beach to a more residential area. They kept insisting that my mum was going to be down on the other end of the beach and that they were going to take care of me. They tried to get me to build sandcastles with them, play in the water with them, and even told me that they could leave to go and get dinner and they'd bring me back afterwards. I kept telling them no, and that I wanted to return to my hotel so that I could go up to my room and check for my mother there. And that's when they got really upset with me. The woman said to me, "We're going to leave, go get dinner at our house, and we'll bring you back to your hotel afterwards. Got it?" I was starting to get really nervous, so I told them I didn't want to go with them and that I could walk back to my hotel on my own. The man then said, I will never forget this, "You're coming home with us for dinner." He said it in one of those creepy, do-it-or-die kind of tones. I don't know, it just stuck with me. Luckily for me, I heard my name in the distance. There was a group of people yelling for me. I bolted over to them, and they asked me who I was. When I told them my name, they smiled so big and said, "There are lots of people looking for you." When I turned around to tell the group that a man and a woman had been hanging out with me, the man and the woman were gone. The group, which actually ended up being hotel workers, took me back to my hotel where everyone was waiting. There was a fire truck, an ambulance, and news crews all there because I had been gone for over half the day. The entire hotel pool area had been shut down in efforts to arrange search parties. My mother was sobbing, but she was okay. When I told the hotel workers what had happened, they were extremely concerned. Apparently, not even a week before, a child went missing in their beach access area. When that kid was found, he claimed a man and a woman lured him out to their car, where they tried to forcibly take him home with them, and that's when he bolted away and found another family for help.
Number 4.
It was the summer of 2011, and I just turned 16 and got my first car. So, like any 16-year-old kid, I like to hop in my car, turn up the music to ear-splitting levels, and go. I started doing a lot of outdoor stuff when I got my car. My friends and I liked to go fishing and hiking. One day, I wanted to go fishing, but everyone was busy, so I decided to head out on my own. No big deal. I packed my car and headed to the beach. It was a nice, warm day on the gorgeous California coast. The only thing that would make it better was having a friend with me. I walked onto the pier and began fishing. People came and went, occasionally making conversation with me. I was there all day, and around 4 p.m, an Asian man who appeared to be in his mid-40s walked up and set up his fishing stuff right next to me. Okay, whatever, I thought to myself. He started making conversation, and before I knew it, 2 hours had passed. Well, shit, I better get home. Hope you catch something good out here, I told him. I started packing my stuff when this guy says,
"Oh, hey, can I have your number so we can text sometime?"
I wasn't even thinking. I normally don't hesitate because I was used to giving it out a lot at school, so I gave it to him. What the fuck did I just do? I thought to myself. At that moment, I already knew nothing good would come from this. Sure enough, he called it to make sure I wasn't lying. The creepy bastard. I left without saying anything. Guess what? He followed me back to the parking lot saying he needed to go too. Oh, damn it. My heart started racing. He was gonna follow me, and I knew it. Luckily for me, he parked way on the other end of the lot. He asked me to wait for him because he still wanted to talk a bit. And I told him I'll wait, but of course I wasn't hanging around. I packed my car quickly, changed out of my sandy beach smelling clothes, jumped in my car and drove away. My phone went off and he started following me to the freeway entrance. I didn't answer. As soon as I got on the on-ramp, I floored it and started weaving through traffic at 95 miles per hour, trying to lose this creep. He already had my cell number and knew my car. Luckily, I was 45 minutes from home, so I had plenty of time to lose him. Thanks to my rusty Scion TC, I was able to lose him after a 15-minute car chase. I got off the freeway and went through some city streets where I managed to lose him after making various turns and getting back on the freeway. He then started harassing me over text messages, saying that he wanted me and that he would get me one way or another. He would ask me for nudes. He sent some of his own, and I kept their messages to show the police if things went further. After months of not replying to his messages, he asked me,
"Are you mad at me? I didn't ask for nudes. It was my friend messing around."
Chills ran through my body every time I got a message from him. I was on the edge at all times, constantly checking my surroundings, and started carrying a switchblade. One day, I finally replied to one of his messages with, "Who's this? I just bought this phone with this number. You must have the wrong number." Luckily for me, that's all it took. It stopped. I erased everything he sent me and went on with my life. Since then, I learned not to just blurt things like that out so quickly. Who knows what this dirtbag would have done to me? It still scares me to think about it.
Number 5.
This all happened about 10 to 12 years ago. I don't remember how old I was, but probably somewhere between 5 or 6 years old. We used to live in a city right next to the ocean. All of this happened in Germany. So, obviously, during the summer my family and I would go to the beach and enjoy ourselves. Me and my best friend Jonas were just exploring the area around the beach, and were just being little kids. There was this huge bush that you could go into. It might sound weird, but try to imagine a bush about 20 to 30... It might sound weird, but try to imagine a bush about 20 to 30 feet high, thick sides and hollow on the inside, so kids would always go in there and play. Me and my friend went in there and were just joking around, fighting with branches and stuff like that. That's when I noticed a shadow outside the bush heading towards the entrance of the bush. Me and my friend don't think anything about it and just keep playing. The shadow kept walking and eventually reached the opening. It was an old man, maybe 60 years old, and he starts smiling and tries to talk to us. We're basically trapped in the bush and start to freak out because we weren't supposed to talk to strangers, and here is this old guy trying to talk to us. He then asked us stuff like where we were from and where our parents were. That's when my friend lost it and booked it through the bush side. The old man's smile changes to an angry face and charges at me. I follow my friend's example and we run to our parents. We told them what happened and they stopped allowing us to go back there. We keep going to the beach for a couple of weeks and I could always see the guy in the distance looking at me and my body. So fast forward a couple of weeks. There was a huge lifeguard building with toilets. My friend goes to pee and I go with him because I want to buy some ice cream. My friend goes to the restrooms, which are about 20 feet down the hall from the snack bar. I buy my ice cream and wait for him. That's when I heard the scream. I run to the bathroom and rip open the door. There's just one stall and the door is open. The same old guy that had been stalking us is standing in front of the stall. And I can see my friend inside the stall standing in the corner screaming and crying. Then the door behind me shut and the guy sees me and starts yelling and looks like he's about to murder someone. I hurry to open the door and storm out to get help. I scream as loud as I can and a couple of lifeguards run over and I pointed at the door and they went in. They got the guy and the police were called. Me and my friend then had to make statements and my friend was in a therapy for a couple of months but is now fine. Turns out, the guy was known to be a child molester but the police had no evidence to lock him up until this incident.
Number 6.
This story isn't necessarily that scary, but in the time being, I was very frightened. Just to preface, this story happened when I was about 15 years old. Just as an added extra, here's a picture of the shoreline of Magens Bay. I had gone on a cruise with some family and friends. My parents had decided to invite everyone on a huge vacation to the Caribbean, and since we'd never really been out of the country before, everyone was completely excited. We were set to visit the island of St. Thomas, St. Martin and Puerto Rico, and each morning during the week we would dock just outside of the island's borders. We decided that on most of the islands we were simply going to walk around the town and maybe get something to eat. But when we heard about Magens Bay in St. Thomas, which was recently voted on Travel Channel as one of the best beaches in the entire world, we knew we had to make an exception and go there. We woke up nice and early. The sun was just rising up over the beautiful mountains as we made our way to a minibus that was driven by a local. There was no way we could have walked there as the bay was situated on the other side of the mountain and the quickest route was directly over it. We needed to be back by midday approximately, so the bus ride was the best option. When we arrive at the beach, I am particularly stunned at the sheer beauty of the locale. Everything was lush and green. The sand was virtually pink and the water was just north of 75 degrees. Me and my friend Paul were in the water, swimming and talking and having a good time in general, when we heard something. From far away, we could hear something that sounds like helicopter blades spinning. That's odd, I said to Paul. How would helicopter blades spinning like that make enough noise so that we could hear it over the other side of the mountain? That's when it hit us. What we were hearing was either a helicopter with a motor the size of an Oldsmobile, or it was gunfire. Paul shifted uncomfortably in the water. Don't think about it, dude, he told me, but I just couldn't get the thought out of my head. Whatever it was making that noise, it had to have been a powerful assault rifle because the noise was becoming rather sporadic as time went on. After a while though, the noise completely stopped and we went back to our families. After me and Paul had spent some more time swimming and scuba diving with my uncle for a while, we decided that we would amp up the fun and rent some kayaks. After we dragged the kayaks from the little hut and threw them into the water, we swam with them out to a reasonable distance and hopped in. Paul paddled up next to me and asked if I wanted to make a journey over to some mountains that were a little off in the distance, in the center of the bay. Like the adventurous young moron I was, I said yes and we started paddling with reckless abandon towards the mountains. After paddling vigorously for about 15 minutes, however, our arms were completely numb. "Dylan," he shouted. "I can't go anymore, man. I need to rest." I turned around and saw his face was beet red. That's when I looked to my right and saw a little private beach. Yo, I'm gonna go over there. We can pull the boats in and just catch our breath from that tiny shore there. We used the last of our strength to paddle over to the tiny private beach, and we dragged the kayaks onto the shore with us, when I noticed that the beach had stairs running into the sides of the mountain. This is probably where I should explain how the entire bay was set. So, the houses are built on top of mini cliffs overlooking the bay. From there, the houses had stairs that run down to the beach, and there were two sets of stairs. One set led to a majestic house that looked amazing, yet we could not see inside of it. However, the next house itself was clearly visible to us because the living room wall was made entirely of glass. As we were looking up into the house and admiring their beauty, someone came home. At first we thought it was just a local. He walked briskly into the room and then oddly turned around to stare at the door. Then, just as frantically, about 9 other men entered the room with him. They quickly huddled around in the center and started passing around something to each other, which easily could have been a drug deal. Until we saw them stop, and Paul noticed one of the guys staring right at us down on the beach. All of them slowly turned around to face us one by one, and my heart froze in my chest. It was then that the first man went over to the door leading outside and opened it to yell at us. I thought he was going to chastise us for being on the beach, but what he said made me start to realize this could have ended up much worse than it did.
Hey man,
he yelled in a thick Caribbean accent from the back porch of the house.
come on up, let's talk for a little.
At this point, me and Paul were frozen on the spot. Paul, I whispered, back away slowly, drag your kayak in the water and just paddle, just don't look back, go. He was still yelling at us to come up until he screamed, fine. It was at that point we saw him make way to the staircase we were at, and 2 of the other men followed him from the living room. I had seen enough. Me and Paul raced towards our kayaks and frantically pushed them into the water, leaving enormous divots in the shoreline. I never looked back to see if they were chasing us. We paddled hard until we were back dead in the center of the bay, and then we decided that we should go back to our parents. I don't know if it was just my young foolish mind overreacting, but something in my gut to this day tells me that if I went up to that house, I probably never would have saw my parents again. To be honest, we might have even went up if not for that gunfire earlier. Maybe it was to scare us away in the first place. They could have been nice, but who knows. I wasn't willing to take that chance. We got back on the cruise ship later that night, but the memory still stays with me.
Hey guys, it's the Grim Reader here. I hope you enjoyed listening through that. If you did, please slap a like, and if you haven't already, why not subscribe to be notified of future uploads? If you have a story you want me to narrate, please send it to my email in the description box. Once again, thanks a lot for listening.